Ever wondered what really happens behind the scenes? In this video, we uncover surprising facts, hidden truths you have probably never seen before. Get ready to be shocked, enlightened, and maybe even changed.
Robotech began as a broadcast no one expected to last. A war of hearts and machines, carried by voices that believed too much to quit. But behind the missiles and the music, it was love trapped inside technology. 3 shows came together by chance and created something no one expected. The fights that followed nearly erased it, but the dream refused to die. And what started as a late-night experiment changed how a generation saw animation forever. These are 11 weird facts about Robotech, where chaos found its purpose and the dream took flight across the stars. Number 1. Before Robotech ever hit American airwaves, it began as a crisis. In 1984, producer Carl Masek was tasked with adapting Japan's hit anime Super Dimension Fortress Macross for US syndication. The show had everything: love, war, mecha, music, but only 36 episodes, far short of the 65-episode minimum required for American television. For most producers, that was a dead end. For Masek, it was a challenge worth breaking the rules for. He started hunting through Japanese catalogs like a mad scientist assembling a new creature from spare parts. He found Southern Cross, a forgotten space drama about rebellion, and Mospiata, a motorcycle-powered saga of invasion and survival. 3 shows, 3 tones, 3 worlds that didn't belong together. And yet, Masek saw a pattern others missed. Each told the story of humanity rebuilding after disaster. He didn't just edit them together, he rewrote destiny, turning disconnected wars into a single multi-generational epic. When Robotech premiered in 1985, no one had ever seen anything like it. A serialized anime stitched from chaos, unified by emotion. What began as a math problem became a myth. 3 worlds fused by willpower. And from that impossible fusion, a legend was born. Number 2. Before Robotech roared onto American screens, its roots were already intertwined with another mechanical giant, Transformers. The connection wasn't coincidence. It was creation. Both sprang from the imagination of one man, Shoji Kawamori, a young Japanese designer who saw machines not as weapons, but as characters with souls. Kawamori helped craft the transforming VF-1 Valkyrie for Macross, the jet that could unfold, twist, and rise into a humanoid warrior. At the same time, he was sketching designs for Diaclone, a Japanese toy line that would soon evolve into Transformers. His hand shaped both universes, the elegant flight of Veritex and the stoic power of Optimus Prime. When Robotech adapted Macross for Western audiences, that shared DNA pulsed through every battle scene. Kids didn't know it, but the same mind that designed the jet streaking through Robotech's skies had also built the robot they were playing with on their bedroom floors. 2 worlds, 1 creator, and a single vision that transformed metal and motion into mythology. Robotech and Transformers weren't rivals. They were siblings, born from the same spark of imagination that taught a generation to believe machines could dream. Number 3. In the 1980s, most Japanese imports were gutted before they reached American TV. Lasers replaced bullets, death became disappearance, and every hint of romance was scrubbed away. But when Robotech crossed the Pacific, something remarkable happened. It survived mostly intact. Producer Carl Masek fought for the show's integrity. He convinced network executives that American audiences were ready for something smarter, something more emotional. Instead of slicing out the battles, he simply softened the edges, trimming only the most explicit moments. A few blood splatters vanished, a handful of lines were rewritten, and the more risque scenes, like glimpses of teenage girls in showers, were quietly removed. But the heart of the story, the tragedy, the loss, the love, all of it stayed. For a Saturday morning cartoon in 1985, it was a revolution. Kids saw heroes fall, lovers separated, entire worlds burn, emotions that most cartoons never dared to show. Robotech didn't survive censorship by hiding its darkness. It survived by proving that even on children's TV, you could tell the truth about war and still find hope in the wreckage. Number 4. Before Robotech ever hit television, there was another Robotech, one that had nothing to do with anime, heroes, or Veritech fighters. In 1984, DC Comics released Robotech Defenders, a short-lived series inspired not by Macross, but by Revel's model kits, a mix of random Japanese mecha with no shared story or soul. The result was a strange hybrid, part Star Wars, part Transformers, and entirely bewildering. Fans who stumbled upon it were baffled. The title promised high-tech warfare and emotion, but the story was a clunky space opera where giant robots battled across vague galaxies with no heart and no human anchor. The comic lasted only 2 issues before collapsing under its own confusion. Then came 1985. Robotech hit US airwaves with a sweeping saga of love, war, and sacrifice. Everything the comic had failed to be. For many fans, it felt like a resurrection, not a debut. But the damage was done. Some thought the TV show was a reboot of the comic. Others assumed it was a tie-in to the toys. It wasn't. It was the real thing. The story with spirit, stakes, and music. Robotech Defenders may have faded into obscurity, but its failure cleared the runway for a version that would soar. One that finally gave the name Robotech something worth defending. Number 5. For decades, Robotech wasn't just fighting aliens. It was fighting lawyers. When Harmony Gold adapted Macross, Southern Cross, and Mospiata into one saga, it created a legal maze that would haunt the franchise for nearly 40 years. The deal that made Robotech possible was struck between Harmony Gold and Tatsunoko Productions, but ownership of the original Macross designs and music belonged to Studio Nue in Japan. When new Macross sequels began airing overseas, Harmony Gold claimed they still held global rights to distribute and merchandise anything bearing the name, even material they never helped create. The result was chaos. Japan could make more Macross, but the rest of the world couldn't see it. Fans begged for official releases, but for 2 decades, nothing moved. Macross Plus, Frontier, and Delta became forbidden treasures, trapped behind borders by contracts no one dared rewrite. The war between studios outlasted the wars in the show itself. Only in 2021 did the clouds finally part. Harmony Gold and Big West reached a historic agreement, freeing the franchise from its long exile. After 40 years of legal dogfights, Robotech could finally fly again, not just as an anime, but as a victory for everyone who never stopped believing the SDF-1 would return to the stars. Number 6. To millions, Robotech was their first taste of anime magic. But to Shoji Kawamori, the creator of Macross, it was theft. In a 2019 interview, he admitted, "I don't understand, nor do I accept the fact that they took and modified my work without asking." To him, Robotech was a pirated version that distorted what he'd built, a love story turned into war. Still, he couldn't ignore the irony. That same adaptation he disowned had made Macross famous around the world. Children who'd never heard Japanese now knew his ships, his songs, his heart. It was fame without consent. threat, a legacy born from conflict. And though Kawamori never embraced Robotech, its shadow carried his genius farther than he ever imagined. Number 7. By 1988, Harmony Gold was dreaming of something vast, a grand continuation called Robotech 2: The Sentinels. It would reunite Rick Hunter, Lisa Hayes, and the next generation of heroes, bridging the wars that had defined the saga. The vision was cinematic: new fleets, new enemies, and a future built from the ashes of the first series. But this time, the enemy wasn't alien, it was arithmetic. When production began, Japan's yen surged in value, sending animation costs skyrocketing overnight. The budget that once promised a galaxy suddenly couldn't afford a single planet. Overseas pre-sales failed to fill the gap, and toy companies, once eager to fund the next wave of merchandise, backed out as markets shifted. The dream bled money faster than it could be saved. By the time Harmony Gold pulled the plug, only fragments existed: half-finished episodes, storyboards, and ambition trapped in limbo. Those remnants were stitched into a 1988 direct-to-video special, a haunting echo of what the Sentinels might have been. It wasn't a creative failure, it was an economic casualty. The sequel that should have carried Robotech into a new era became its ghost, a fleet forever waiting to launch, engines cold, suspended between nostalgia and the stars. Number 8. For 20 years, fans waited for closure, for the final message from deep space. And in 2006, it finally came. Robotech: The Shadow Chronicles promised to finish what the original series had started, the reunion of Scott Bernard and Admiral Rick Hunter, the legendary pilot lost among the stars. But behind the scenes, the old ghost still lingered. The sequel was born under a tangle of legal restrictions and limited budgets. The animation, though sleek and digital, lacked the soul of its 1980s hand-drawn legacy. And worst of all, Rick Hunter himself couldn't appear. The rights to his likeness and story were locked in the same decades-old legal vault that had kept the franchise grounded. The writers had to write around his absence, turning the hero of a generation into a ghost that no one could reach. Fans showed up with hope, and for a moment, the old magic flickered. The Veritex soared again, the music thundered, and the war for humanity's future raged once more. But when the credits rolled, something was missing. The story hadn't ended, it had simply faded into silence. What was meant to be Robotech's rebirth became its elegy, a message from a universe still trapped between legend and limbo. Number 9. Hollywood has been trying to launch a Robotech movie since 2007, and every attempt crashed on takeoff. The rights bounced from Warner Brothers to Sony Pictures, tangled in legal turbulence between Harmony Gold and Tatsunoko. Names like Tobey Maguire, Leonardo DiCaprio, James Wan, and Andy Muschietti were all attached at some point. Directors came and went, scripts rewrote themselves into oblivion, and fan hopes rose and fell like fighter wings under fire. Nearly 2 decades later, the SDF-1 is still grounded, caught between lawsuits and lost visions. And the dream of watching it rise in live action remains exactly that, a dream still waiting for liftoff. Number 10. In the 1980s, giant robots were everywhere. Metallic titans built for boys, marketed through plastic toys and laser sound effects. But Robotech was different. Beneath its dogfights and explosions, it carried a heartbeat. It told stories of love, loss, and sacrifice, of music that could end wars and pilots who learned to feel before they fought. And that emotion changed everything. For the first time, girls tuned in as faithfully as boys. Letters poured into Harmony Gold's offices, not from kids demanding more robots, but from teens crying over characters who fell in love or never came home. Merchandisers were stunned. Alongside Veritech fighters, shelves suddenly held Min-May dolls, fashion sets, and romance-themed posters. A balance no other sci-fi show dared to strike. Adults were watching too. They saw something rare in children's animation, a story that treated young viewers like grown-ups, that let war have consequences and love have weight. Surveys even revealed that women made up a slight majority of Robotech's adult audience, a quiet revolution in a genre built on gears and steel. Because Robotech wasn't just about machines, it was about the fragile humans inside them, and the hearts that refused to surrender, even when the world around them burned. Number 11. Before Dragon Ball Z, before Sailor Moon, before anyone in the West even knew the word otaku, there was Robotech. In 1985, American television had never seen anything like it. A cartoon where pilots died, cities fell, and love songs could end wars. Producer Carl Masek didn't just localize Japanese anime. He built a bridge between cultures, blending Macross, Southern Cross, and Mospita into one seamless epic that taught young audiences to follow serialized stories week after week. Kids who'd grown up on He-Man and G.I. Joe suddenly found themselves watching a space opera about heartbreak, betrayal, and redemption. The animation felt exotic, the pacing slower, the emotions deeper. It didn't talk down to them, it asked them to feel. Across classrooms and conventions, something new began. American anime fandom. Robotech became the first gateway for millions who would later devour Akira, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Naruto. It proved that anime wasn't just strange imports, it was art, and it belonged on American screens. Because Robotech didn't just tell stories of intergalactic harmony, it created it, uniting East and West, dreamers and creators, into one shared universe of imagination. Bonus fact, Robotech didn't just conquer TV, it conquered stereo speakers. When the show debuted in 1985, its sweeping orchestral score and pop-infused themes hit fans like a revelation. The soundtrack album, a rarity for a dubbed cartoon, actually charted in indie record stores and fan conventions across the US. Composer Ulpio Minucci treated the music like an epic film score, blending brass fanfares with haunting love themes that made every battle feel operatic. Fans played it on cassette decks, memorizing melodies as if they were pop hits. The series even earned recognition from the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films for its pioneering approach to storytelling and sound. It wasn't just another cartoon soundtrack. It was proof that Robotech didn't play to sell toys. It played to move hearts. And in the 80s, that made it louder than any rock band on earth. Robotech began as a patchwork, 3 anime stitched into one impossible dream. It survived lawsuits, budget collapses, and decades of limbo, held together only by faith and fandom. It taught a generation that animation could be epic, that love, loss, and war could coexist inside a Saturday morning show. It blurred borders, rewrote rules, and made the impossible feel human. For some, it was their first anime. For others, their first heartbreak. But for everyone who ever heard that theme rise over the stars, it was unforgettable. If this story still echoes in your memory, drop a comment. Tell us what legendary world we should defend next. Because Robotech didn't just tell a story about saving the universe. It became one, a rebellion built from ink, steel, and sound. And even now, long after the final broadcast faded, the SDF-1 still flies. In memory, in music, and in every heart that ever dreamed of the stars.
Thanks for watching all the way through. If this opened your eyes, hit like, share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening videos. Stay curious, stay aware.